So I'm joined this evening, or I think you're this morning, right?
Morning for us, yeah.
From Sydney with Oisín McGrath and a friend of mine and a friend of his, Emma Gallagher, the daughter of Thomas Gallagher from Derry. Emma suggested that I interview Oisín about his journey back to the faith. That it's extremely interesting, and I thought, Oisín, if you have the time, you could just let us know what has been happening with you and the return to the faith, because I think you could inspire other people around Ireland and people that are searching for something. Maybe you can just kick us off with your journey from Ireland to Australia and then back to the faith.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks very much for having me, Robert. Yeah, we met through Emma, good friend, great character. You can't really get past Emma.
No.
But yeah, where to start? I mean, it's a real honor to be here. It's an honor to talk about it. If it can help people, I think I'm all about it. Um, kind of, I've had this question a lot, with people. It's kind of very interesting to people about how do you come to faith, at this age and this day. And there's so much to it. It's hard to distill it into points, but I can sort of do my best to kind of give a brief overview. Um, so I was born in Ireland, um, not particularly devout family, but we would have gone to mass. I remember going to mass over there. I'm fairly confident. More of a Catholic culture there, so it's kind of cultural maybe as well. And when we came out here then in 2008, I was five. Brother and sister were a bit older. Kind of an interesting time to come to a new country. I remember it being really different, but not. I didn't have friends. I wasn't as socialized as the older ones, so it wasn't as much of a blow. But it was strange, and I definitely saw there was a difference. Maybe it was that culture when I went to the school. Didn't kind of understand the ways of the people, but not traumatic, right? It was grand, and came over initially. Went into a public school for a wee bit, and because we'd heard the public schools were good here or whatever. But family friend suggested we try the Catholic school where their children went, and soon went there. Um, so yeah, as far as faith, I think we might have gone to mass occasionally when we came. Essentially, didn't go in Australia much. My parents' generation sort of fell away from the practices of the faith of the ancestors, of my grandparents. Um, Mum was born in England, so my maternal grandparents they went to England. They were working over there, so she went to Catholic school and all that. But I think they were influenced by that culture maybe a bit more. Dad's family a bit more traditional, but still that generation kind of you don't see the faith as much in practice. I think once they were 18, they kind of went on their own way. Mass was at the back of their mind, kind of thing. What was sort of had a faith. Um, but anyways, we got here, so it wasn't really part of the home, like it wasn't really part of that was talked about. But the Catholic school, nonetheless, there are just a few good things there. The primary school wasn't terrible, there was learned to be Our Father, the Hail Mary. But you really could see that the teachers didn't necessarily, even as a child, it's interesting to have this intuition. The teachers kind of don't believe what they're saying almost, don't really practice what they preach. It seems inauthentic. I feel like kids kind of have a nose for that. I don't know why. Um, so we kind of never took it serious. The friends of mine that I made, their families, it's almost sort of a Catholic school is sort of seen to be preferable to people. I think most of them weren't there for Catholic reasons at all. I don't think a lot of them just thought it would be a good school. So families that I met and things, they weren't devout. The attitude towards religion was kind of like, ah, yeah, it's something unnecessary. We kind of put up with it as part of this school environment. So yeah, the first 6 years they had received. I was baptized, of course. Probably should say. Uh, Received the sacraments, reconciliation, the communion, the confirmation. Um, I don't think really at any point I really believed it. Went along with it. It was more of a cultural kind of a bad thing as far as I was concerned. My sister seemed to have some sentiments of belief, I think, from my grandmother. I never met this grandmother now, Breed, but she had a bit of a faith. I remember her telling me about the communion, but all in all, really didn't think much of it, and that was standard. I don't know, I don't remember any kid that actually really had a faith, nor any family met any family. Um, Not too bad. I would say that the primary school there was a lot they didn't teach us that they should have, didn't teach us that they should have, but didn't teach us anything explicitly bad. The high school, again, a Catholic school, at this point, I don't have much conception of sin or even though we've had this confession sacrament when we were 11 or whatever, Catholic spiritual life is not in my mind. I'm not looking at the world through that lens at all. It's not real to me. We have the religious class then in five classes a week in high school. Yeah, that was a much worse impression. I think it was kind of a lot of what we were taught was just think it wasn't taught very well. It was not. Again, you see that same thing. The teachers don't kind of aren't practicing what they preach. And later on, when I learned the faith, I was kind of thinking the way they taught it, so unusual because they missed all the meat and they spent their time on all this, I wouldn't say irrelevant stuff. The core story is there, the resurrection, and there's some bits you can't get past, but so much was missing. And they really, no one, they didn't really invigorate a fire in anyone. I don't think anyone believed it. Then there were some worse things as well. Like one teacher even said to us one day, the gospel is just a kind of a load of stories, and you just derive whatever the good message is out of it, take what you want out of it, kind of. This was the attitude, this wasn't, that didn't necessarily catch us off guard. We thought it was a bit funny that a Catholic teacher would say something like that. Because it wouldn't be very professional, but we kind of weren't surprised either. Mostly secular people teaching religion as well. So I really didn't like religion. We went 5 times a week. It was painful. I remember it was painful. If you could get out of it, you would have. Everyone whinged about it because it was sort of universally accepted. It was a fairy tale. And so, isn't it bizarre that we have to go along with this charade and kind of put up with it? And that was kind of the attitude, I suppose, for most people in my life. My family, my mom and my dad, they sort of, I think, like many Irish people, they were sort of turned away from the faith with clergy abuse and sort of some of these horrible things that happened. And to me, it doesn't change the faith per se. I don't know. I guess people lost the faith in the church. Maybe they assumed it wasn't something credible at all to begin with. I don't know, but that sort of stained their perceptions as well. So you wouldn't have heard, I wouldn't have heard fond sentiments about religion really in general. So that's kind of the early perceptions, which I think is important. I probably, funnily enough, it's ironic. I probably detested it more than others. I was more of probably a staunch kind of like an atheist. I would, I'd maybe even mock people probably who believed it. And then at the same time in that school, we learned about evolution. The theory of evolution. We sort of learned about it like it was, that this was the nature of reality. And it's very plausible, 15, 16 years of age. As well, another interesting thing is that I never really had a reason to doubt what I was told. If there was authority teaching something, I was naive in the sense I thought everything was good, government was good, and naive to I had never seen any reason to mistrust authority, and so I thought that the curriculum was credible, and I was pretty arrogant, prideful. Like I remember thinking, like when I was learning about things, whether it be evolution or vaccines or all these modern technologies, and then like if I ever heard a rebuttal from some older people or something about that, I'd kind of pridefully like, assert my opinion over theirs. I thought I knew something they didn't. I thought tradition was a load of nonsense, that pseudoscience, that kind of people had been deceived and brainwashed. I suppose I thought religion was a brainwashing. I thought people that taught it in school didn't believe it and they were doing it because they had to. And the people that really believed it I just felt sorry for them. I just thought that's kind of pathetic. Um, so that's it. I was pretty hardline anti-religious, probably more than other students. Me and my friends would, belittle it and mock it and things. So I think that's enough to say about that chapter. And so then kind of went on. Suffered with depression a lot in my childhood, um, anxiety and things. A few years I missed school, like say, really came about year nine, missed a good year of school there. Went on these medications, been on loads of them, tried different things, some of them disastrous, um, difficult, lost a lot of faith in the psychiatric institutions, to be honest, because some of it's pretty gruesome, pretty rough stuff. And went back to school then for a bit. I actually got exempt from religion so that I could catch up. I thought that was great, funnily enough. And then, but yeah, I always had this sort of, I always sort of, I hated being lied to more than others, I think. I don't know why. Maybe it was a grace. And I always sought the truth and I valued sort of sincerity. When I was younger, I just, I became the person I thought people wanted me to be. And I just went whatever way the wind blew, like the flag. And then I, I grew out of that in the teenagehood and I valued authenticity, sincerity, truth. And I remember I used to, ask questions probably too much. I was a bit cheeky. I wasn't a very good student. Didn't like to sit still all day, but I'd ask a lot of questions, and it often it put teachers on the spot. And some teachers liked it. A lot of teachers really didn't like it because they saw it as an aggression, I suppose. But I was genuinely, to me, things had to make sense. I wanted it to actually be logical or understandable. So I clashed with teachers a lot. And so in the final year, well, in the year previous, I moved to a different campus for a fresh start because I reckon at the time, I still kind of believe, yeah, that the teachers sort of had a vendetta against me and I kind of couldn't win. I thought, I got to have a fresh start. And I kind of had a fresh start. And sure enough, things came about again, problems started again. And so I stopped going to school then. Excuse me. But I'd actually, this medication I'd gone on, it was sort of working. There were side effects. I wanted to come off. That had bad effects as well. But yeah, so then I left. I really didn't go into year 12 much, 2 months, month. Left that. Just went home, just too depressed kind of thing, too anxious to go in. Came off the medication at the same time. And so that was a great depressive spell then, good 6 months there, just darkness. So I think these periods of darkness were important. And really struggling for hope in those times, really dreading each day, really everything is sort of an effort. It's a bad thing. I wouldn't wish it on anyone and to fall into that. But a blessing at this point in retrospect, I think blessing. But because it forced me to mature in certain ways that I probably otherwise wouldn't have, and see things in a different way. So then a few things happened. I actually ended up getting into university with this sort of little wormhole entrance exam sort of way. Went to uni, very worldly. A lot of feminism in my family. Mum's mum, my mom, my sister. People I was really close to growing up. So I was sort of had a lot of this Marxist ideology. It sort of inflamed everything I believed. And then because I'd been so depressed, I kind of thought like, why should these depressed people, this mental illness is sort of this thing that you're just thrown into. And I sort of thought like, like the Marxist, like the equity kind of thing, like, I'm a victim, so I need a leg up, otherwise it's not fair kind of thing, among other things. I didn't know it was Marxism, but I had a lot of these ideas. Um, and so anyway, I went to uni. Um, the freedom was profound. Staying on campus there, I had no first time away from home, 17. Lots of lots of life, lots going on, social kind of, lots of opportunities. I'm kind of extroverted, so it was great. I was really enjoying it. Started off optimistic, kind of knuckling down doing the studies. So I was really excited about the studies. It was a great change from high school. Um, the dining hall, I remember meeting a lot of people there. Naturally, I sort of became pretty lonely, and I sort of compulsively started to seek out company, of people, whoever I could, just to sort of fill the void. Um, the guy that was the residential advisor for our floor, I became really good friends with him. He was a Singaporean guy, really good guy, to be honest. Probably lost in the same way I was lost. But he smoked cannabis quite a bit. I'd smoked cannabis before. I'd been, I'd done that when I was 15, 16. There was episodes, went through it, but it was never really, yeah, there was probably months where I smoked it with friends in a cultural sort of way. Then I gave it up before uni explicitly. I remember that. I intentionally gave it up for the sake of the studies. So I fell into that. I was sort of desperate to fit in, have friends, feel a sense of belonging, not be alone. And he didn't oblige me to. I kind of just did it. I don't know why. I don't know why. I suppose I was filling a hole. I didn't want to be out of place. Thought it might be kind of a social lubricant or whatever. Makes you really lazy. Makes you pretty well useless. That stuff. Over time, it depresses you. It definitely depressed me. I used to lie to myself and tell me it was medicine, it was good, and all this. Found company in the wrong places because the only kind of people that were around to hang out with were people that were dossing off and smoking and drinking. I wasn't much of a drinker because I had, at this point, I had started this intense irritable bowel syndrome sort of thing. It started probably because of the cannabis, I think, as well because of the medications. I should add, just to give context to the mental health thing, after the uni, sorry, yeah, between those years of school, I think by that point I'd been on two or three different medications. So this was kind of an ongoing thing. I was cognizant of this depression thing. Sometimes it would get worse than others. So anyway, the bad habits, smoking cannabis basically every day, um, as much as I probably ever smoked. I think I actually ended up smoking more later in time, but a lot, and using the money from mom and dad to bloody buy it as well, and lying to them, and eventually I think I broke down, kind of not in a seriously emotional way, but I kind of told them, and I said, "Listen, I need this stuff. This is like keeping me going, this is great stuff." Lying to myself, I think I sort of knew. Every time I smoked it, I just became useless. I became, you know, within an hour I was in bed, eating rubbish, doing nothing productive. I used to even study on it and think I was sure I wasn't learning at, and I must have known that. Um, just foolish. I remember that time I spent a lot of time in my room. It was really hard. Whether it was anxiety or whatever, I just wouldn't go out of the room. I spent a lot of time in the room, and that was really hard. And anxiety probably got worse as well. But I think that marijuana was critical in falling. So I stopped studying, fell behind essentially, slept in through lectures, said, I'll catch up on them. Snowed in with work, and the stress was too much for me. And I was low anyway. And so I just gave up on that. Kind of crashed and burned out of uni. Fortunately or unfortunately. Just went off the grid sort of thing. I was really, really depressed. Yeah. I remember having like sort of confrontations with housemates because I was probably being careless or making noise and stuff or something, doped out, and being like really stressed over it and stuff and getting worked up over it. Anyway, I went away out of there. I actually went and had a ACT after that. Went back to Bunbury. I was depressed. Saw my doctor. He actually advised against it, and I said no, I want to have it. People don't know it's electroconvulsive therapy. When I was at the college, I met a few medical students. One of them told me it's this really promising new treatment for depression. And I thought this is great. So I went. I said I went past my doctor's directions and I said, "This is great. I just want this. I'm fed up of trying all this stuff. I tried so many meds. I think all in all, I was probably on 10 different meds at different times. Went about that. Some of those meds as well, seriously made me violent and terrible stuff, Went on, did that. It was quite a risk. I didn't care. I was careless. I was desperate. Doctor was seemingly nice. I remember being in the hospital there, voluntarily admitted to hospital, private hospital, where they do it. And yeah, it was a very depressing place. I didn't leave the room much. Um, it's amazing to think that mentally ill people go to those places to get well because I think I actually got more ill while I was there. And then what they were feeding me wasn't good. Again, I had this irritable bowel syndrome thing going on. That was a great, I think the suffering is key between the depression and then that was really bad as well. I actually had the worst attacks of that when I was at the college. That's just terrible, It's closely tied to anxiety. When the stomach gets bad, the anxiety gets bad, and vice versa, and it just perpetuates. I would have almost attacks, and like even at the time, not even before the hospital, I remember like being on the shower floor and in the agony of the pain and just saying, "Lord, have mercy," again and again. And mum and dad were distraught by that, because geez, I must have been desperate, but I was. I had no one else could help me, Um, absolutely. Had that ECT anyway. Not nothing great, nothing happened much. Short-term memory loss thankfully went away. But he started me on this venlafaxine medication, which was it's kind of working, Um, don't remember the side effects, but I remember that I had to keep going up on dose and up on dose and up on dose because it would stop working. And yeah, I went up as far as you could go, 375 milligram, which was mental, And I thought it was great for the first time in my life. Um, well, there was another medication where I had similar effects, but it actually lifted it off of me, this sort of weight of depression. And I was like, had this functionality, and I sort of felt like this has been, it's real. This something actually has been working against me. And now that it's gone, I can objectively feel, you know, what life is. And I can understand why people want to live and how they get on with their life. But it kept fading away. And then I was on this max dose. And yeah, the, it'd make me really insensitive and violent and agitated, no empathy, sort of sociopathic. It would make me aggressive. Like I was sort of like a fella who was pumped up. It's an adrenergic drug. It's like a fella pumped up on adrenaline, and not thinking right, like impulsive, like a fella that is in a prison and he's watching his back, kind of. You're not going to get the best of him. And my parents recognized it. They'd pull me up on it, and they'd say, "You're not yourself," and I would say, I would be, militant that that's not true because it was like a drug, for me, it was like, this is my ticket to have that depression off me. Like it was unbelievable relief, even with all this other really quite bad side effects. I didn't care because I just thought, I was just thinking about myself, They were right though. And I sort of knew they were right. Didn't think about it though. Didn't even want to confront that reality anyways. Um, I can't remember the cause, but anyways, that kind of stopped work. I wanted to come off that. Um, that was a real chapter of despair, anyways. There was a few years there. That was from 2020 on, 2 or 3 years there, struggling, really bad. So bad darkness and time suicidal. The hardest time was coming off that medication. That medication is horrific to come off. Uh, I wouldn't advise anyone to go on it. Coming off that was one of the hardest things I ever did. Just like I would even outbursts and anger and busting stuff and threatening my parents. Oh my gosh, it's just horrific. Be sad, but that's what happened, and I felt like a victim in it all. I felt like everyone was against me. I felt like everyone was at cause for whatever I was going through. You know, blaming mom, blaming dad because of this and because of that, because you didn't do this, you didn't do that. Why did you? Why was I born? Like it's all your fault, this kind of stuff, because it's so horrific, life's not worth living kind of thing. I was even thinking about like euthanasia, going to like Luxembourg or something. I thought it was horrifically sad suicide I did for the family, and but I thought they've seen it now for years, to suffer. I thought, if they really loved me, they would they'd be happy for me if I went. I remember thinking about this asphyxiation with nitrogen gas, where you put it over your head and you just breathe it in and you kind of go to sleep. I didn't want to hang myself in case it went wrong. Um, I never made physical provisions to kill myself, I would say. Maybe it was, but I sort of believe my inquiries into it personally were serious. Hard to know. I know in the mental health industry, when someone comes in, they say, do you have a plan? How are you going to do it? If you try to do it, they're more interested in the actual outward behavior. But I kind of feel like in my heart, it was a serious consideration anyway. Um, there was episodes of self-harm. It was not, I thought it was, physical harm is nothing compared to what is going on inside. And it was really just for attention, to be honest. It was cry for help. I just wanted people to take it serious. I was hopeless. And I just thought, if you knew the state I was in, you'd be jumping up and down to try and help me. Because you can't see it, you kind of don't believe it. So there was times where I was frustrated, especially coming off that meds, where I would, very sad, very bad thing to do. But yeah, I would do things in their midst. Like one day I was just frustrated and I just dug my nails into my head. Another day I got a screwdriver and I ripped down my arm. Just desperation, and I wanted the reaction from them, because I wanted them to understand that, like, this is the least of my worries, this is no worry. So if this horrifies you, why are you not horrified for whatever's going on? But I couldn't articulate my words. I couldn't explain myself well, because I couldn't think. I was like an impulsive, fearful animal, I was just acting and reacting. And it was really sad, and probably traumatic, not just for me, but for mom and dad. It's really unfortunate. That's what happened. And that sort of anxiety of not being able to explain myself, and people not understanding, and not being, no way out. Later on, I suppose, to close that chapter, thankfully got through that period, uh, just really hard. And I was waiting for this ADHD diagnosis for a long time. I was banking all my hope on that. I'd taken up the gym at a point. I was taking loads of caffeine just to get to the gym. That helped. But then I'd sleep all day afterwards. That was basically all I could do with my day. But that helped a bit. I thank the gym a lot. Exercise. Exercise for people that are suffering. Exercise really does work for mental health. But yeah, so let's close that chapter. So that was a really hard time. Really hard. I think it was the grace of God that pulled me through it. I think God was there. I didn't know God was absolutely there, especially at the lowest times. And even one night I went to the emergency and I just waited, and I was covered in blood, and they just didn't care, And I just thought, gosh, I really have no one. I'm really on my own. These are kind of important realizations, I think. And my parents really loved me. They're really good parents. I'm blessed beyond comprehension, and that's that sort of thing. I mean, I just don't know how any parents can really deal with it. It's a hard thing. They didn't have the answers. I didn't have the answers. But yeah, so I actually ended up getting on the ADHD medication. That actually helped quite a bit. So I think the ADHD was undiagnosed through the years. It was sort of masked by an intelligence. I got good results in school, but all the writing was on the wall, never did the assignments, all that. That was the source of a lot of problems. Now, I don't like medication. I'd rather not be taking it, but the quality of life difference for me is huge. It's the difference of kind of having a functional life. So I do take it until I can find something more, whether it's a psychological origin, I don't know, maybe so. So came through all that. All this thing of not being able to communicate, like when I was really stressed and doing the self-harm stuff, really, I wanted to be able to communicate. Came across Jordan Peterson's work. His work had helped a lot. It was very practical. As a man, I think like he kind of loved that, procedural, logical. And I was never a good reader, ADHD sort of thing. It took me 3 years to read his first book, but I eventually did. And and it helped. The rules helped. There's 12 rules there. I think I don't promote Jordan Peterson. I think that, because he's evolutionist, he's got some of these dangerous ideas. I think it's fortunate that I had Protestant heresies and things in my conceptions before I became a Catholic, so I wouldn't recommend him. But it was part of the journey. It definitely helped, and a lot of it was taking responsibility for yourself, putting your life in order, and some of it's biblical. One that really stuck out was tell the truth, or at least don't lie. That was probably the most impactful one because the logic made good sense to me, and it suggested that the truth is good. If the truth's not good, then nothing will save us. Everything you try is going to fall us under. So you need some faith. You need to assume the truth is good. And even if the truth's not good, better to assume it is, because what do you have otherwise, And I thought, yeah, that makes sense. The truth is good. So don't lie, even once, which is pretty mad in this day and age because lying is just habitual. And I didn't think anything of lying. Lying was just part of life. Everyone thought I was sort of autistic or crazy that I wouldn't lie. No one understood it. No one condoned it. But the logic made sense to me. And I said, yeah, I'm committed to that. And like the truth, that's the pursuit of the truth then was something I sought. Like as we know, Christ is the truth. So I really think that at that point I was on the path. But I started to write a lot. Jordan Peterson really, I must have listened to more hours of Jordan Peterson than most. I think I was in the top percentile of listeners or something on Spotify. And I loved him. It was like a god, because he'd helped me and I was really grateful. And I thought this man deserves recognition. And, what he has to say is really good and useful. Some of it really is. So those 12 rules, like a lot of them are pretty Christian in their fundamentals. Now, he used to talk about Christianity a fair bit, which was interesting. Most of the people I met that talked about Christianity had no credibility. I'd assumed they were brainwashed, mindless sort of drones, or they were just liars. And he had a lot of integrity, and I knew he was committed to the truth, and I believed it in his authenticity. Um, and I always saw, yeah, he had these lectures on Genesis and stuff. And I thought, yeah, but no, whatever. That's as if this like smart guy is caught up with this rubbish or whatever. But they were there anyway, and I grew to like him more and more. So yeah, I investigated all his work, the psychoanalysis stuff. I thought it was all really interesting, the history, even some of the literature he recommended. I was impressed by most of what I saw. Learned loads from him. Even just my vocabulary and my speaking, just listening to him improved a lot, which was great. I used to be very bad at English in school, and my English came pretty good. Uh, well, just because I was that interested in Jordan Peterson. He's such a good communicator that I just picked up on his methods. Anyway, he used to really advocate. Um, he talks a lot about people who are in struggles, which I always knew I was. It's very relevant. And not just me, a lot of young men and some women in the same way. I mean, that's his primary demographic. These are the people that benefit most from his work. He advocates a lot for writing, and I thought, yeah, the writing, uh, I could understand. He would say writing is like secularized prayer. Writing is like thought, and he said without writing, we don't actually think necessarily. We think we think. It's more like notions come into our head, and we sort of agree with them or not. And writing is really thinking. He said people don't think because thinking is hard. It's really hard, and it's effortful, and it's not in our nature to voluntarily exercise effort for anything unnecessary. But he really believed in writing, and it made sense to me. So I started writing, um, originally on paper. Sorry, now just a bit dry there. Started writing, and it was amazing. I think it's sort of ADHD thing. You have like ADHD is a diagnosis. I don't know. Maybe it's something else. They call it ADHD. I don't have much faith in all that stuff, but I know it is ADHD, and sort of these thoughts are racing. I think
Mm.
it's characterized generally by like a really fast, a sort of an overworking mind almost. And you very rarely make sense of everything that comes into your head. You sort of habituate to a state of being where things are flying past, and you're sort of going, that looks good, that looks good. And so what you're believing in or assuming to be true or false is sort of more emotional or impulsive than actually rational. Once I started writing, I started to formulate my thoughts about things that I thought I knew. I was very impressed with what was coming onto the page. It was revelatory, it was healing, it was amazing. Couldn't believe it. That for me, maybe I just need a pen to actually think. Maybe without a pen, I sort of can't think. And man, I would just write, fixate on that for sometimes 6 hours. My hand would be falling off. I moved onto the computer, then I could go a bit faster. Um, excuse me. But there is something special about writing with a pen, but I just couldn't get the words out fast enough. There was so much to process, unbelievable. And still to this day, so much to process. And processing it was healing. And it was good for the anxiety because a lot of what I was worried about was because I hadn't really thought about whatever was antagonizing me. And it really, the answers were before me, but I had to work them out. So I really saw the fruits of writing. I thought writing is great. And started to write, kept writing. And things started to become more understandable, orderly. Life sort of started to become orderly. Got a job in a gym. I had really thought the gym was critical for me in getting through the hard times, and I wanted to bring it to other people. I had studied gym instruction and started to work in a gym. And I think writing all throughout that period gave me the sort of ability and balance. But when I was writing, and I think this was Jordan Peterson's method, he would sort of divide his subconscious, sort of, you have like a devil's advocate, and then you have yourself, and you're sort of, these two people are sort of debating to see is there sense in the arguments you're making, the things you believe, the things that you're seeing and observing, what you're deriving from what you're observing. Is it rational? This person is trying his hardest to break it down. This person's supporting it. That kind of works, and I was doing that, and so then in a sort of a way, with respect to Jordan Peterson's Christian work, I think I'd started to listen to some of it. I was interested in it because this whole journey was about tradition. As I acknowledged tradition and embraced it in some form or another, life became more orderly, made more sense. There was great wisdom in it. I started to learn that, my ancestors weren't naive, mindless people at all, that it was full of richness, that it was, in a sense, a lost wisdom that had been taken from us. And I thought the Christian stories maybe were interesting because they were full of wisdom. I thought maybe they weren't investigating for that cause. I think I listened to some of this stuff. It made sense. I kind of remember recalling that without that, it doesn't really make sense. I remember him saying things like, love is the answer. He was talking about the suffering of life. Love is the answer. He was talking about other things I can't remember, but I always, yeah, I stay on track anyway. But yeah, a few Christian ideas I was opening myself up to there, not in a major way, but slowly I was warming to it anyway. Then the writing became essentially prayer without intending to. I was addressing someone, and it didn't take long for me to really realize that that's God. Started the writing would be like, this is happening in my life, and this is happening, and this happened, this is bothering me. But I shouldn't worry about this because you know this and this and this, Oisín, so why are you worried about this? And sort of like going through things. I mean, by the end of it, I was like, and I have so much to be thankful for, and things aren't as bad, and I was thanking someone. I had this gratitude, and because things weren't as bad as I thought. I think that's part of ADHD, is just assume things all the time. And I had a lot to be grateful for, and sure enough, it had to be directed at someone. I can't remember the moment it consolidated, but slowly it became about God. But I was still full of Protestant ideas, and I didn't ever think that I would entertain the thought of going to a Catholic church or learning the Catholic religion. I thought that Christianity might have some credibility, Jesus might, but to find that truth, who knows how. But so I suppose from there, so I sort of started praying. Essentially, I started to have a dialogue with Jesus. I'm pretty confident that I knew that That's why I was talking to him. I addressed it to him, fairly sure. If I didn't, I knew in my heart that it was. And started to just become a bit more moral. I always, and I'm sorry the story's so long, and there's so many other things I could go into, and I'm trying to keep it digestible, I suppose. But I never, like I said, I kind of always liked authenticity and truth. I never had to enjoy lying, people who lied, fake people, But other things as well, I never liked for promiscuous culture. Um, I thought monogamy was always a good thing. Thankfully, I've had a good witness to marriage with mum and dad. Um, like there was things of the modern culture that I just turned my stomach. I just couldn't even make myself accept them. But I was sort of alone in that opinion. And my friends, I was the weird one for that. So I sort of didn't give it much thought. There were things, and when I look back, they were kind of fundamentally Christian morals. And we weren't a majorly Christian house, but obviously every Irish family have some traditional ways about them that are reflected, even if without Christianity, Christian origins or whatever. I became big into Irish music. I fell in love with my culture, the music, the history. It's very historical. Um, this profound love for the Irish history, for the Irish culture. Music was a big part of it. God gave me a gift for music, and in a sense, it's like a language, I suppose, that He speaks to me, or I can speak through. It's a domain that I can navigate through a lot more, say, than literature. Um, that was a big part of it as well. But yeah, for so many things about the world just didn't fit with me, and so I fell away from my friends, and I was just formulating my own sort of way through the world. And really, I had no one around me, and I had no one to ratify what I was saying. I just thought, I'm just interested in the truth now, and I was different to everyone. People didn't understand my ways. That to me, that's not preferable. I didn't do it because I like to stand out. I did it because, unfortunately, to pursuit of the truth necessitated breaking away from the world in some sense. So I was working at the gym. I loved that because I was very isolated in my life. That was a very social job. I got to help people, which I was really happy about because I thought with all my suffering through the years, you'd have loved a bit of help. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to be that help that you never had kind of thing? And I thought the gym was a great way to do that because mental health, I think most people with the gym honestly go for mental health. And that was what I was really passionate about because you don't have to suffer, and you might have a life, you might make a life for yourself. This little thing might make a big difference. And it does. But, yeah, it's a very worldly place, the gym. Um, Boss was just interested in business, sort of saw everyone. Don't want to assume anything about him. I can't really say it, but it seemed to me he kind of saw people as statistics. He was self-interested, and we were just our staff. He treated us well. He taught us well, but we were tools more than we were things. It wasn't really centered around the morality as much. The way the place was ran, it was centered around a business model, and if morality fit in with the business model, then that was convenient. But I remember he wanted me to lie about things. Um, might seem trivial, might seem a bit stupid to be honest. But I had a black eye one day. Me and my brother had a fight, and people would ask. I was so committed to the telling the truth thing. I would just tell him. I was had a fight with my brother. Boss really didn't like that. I was talking about that. You know, maybe it looked bad on him or whatever. Is he looking after his staff? I don't know. I don't know. But I just knew I didn't want to lie about it. And he pulled me up on it among some other things, mainly moral things that at this point, I was convicted. I'm not going to move on these issues. It's a moral matter. And I know logically from Chuck Peterson or whatever that if I diverge from these points in any way, it's going to be bad for me, bad for the world. It's not a good thing. It's just not a good thing, even if God is just a fairy tale. Either way, the truth is necessary for many reasons and other things as well. So I was pretty stubborn and walked away from that, which was pretty stressful. I saw it coming. Prayed. I was praying at that, wasn't I? Yeah. So I need to step back a bit. Yeah. So I sort of that. I was very, very much on the way at that point because what had happened is with all this, experience of this opening my mind to Christianity in some sense, although I didn't know that's what it was. Um, but consolidated it in a heavy way. And this love for the Irish culture and tradition, and this respect for it, this newfound respect for it, and this fascination with it, this recognition that there's a brilliance in the wisdom of my Irish ancestry, and um, and that because I'd come to all Jordan Peterson's work and I had to reverse all these Marxist and victimhood and all these silly ideas I had, there was sort of a necessitated humility there. I had to be humble to do that. And so that experience of being humble then helped me to acknowledge that my arrogance had blinded me from the truth there, and probably in many other ways as well, And progressively that grows, I hope, pray. But it tended to. And more and more, every day I was a bit more open-minded to tradition, especially my Irish tradition. Of course, the one taboo subject was Catholic religion. I just thought, yeah, Irish tradition's great, but that's the one thing that, is they got wrong. But it's amazing because the spirit of the Irish music is so strong, and especially when the music of rebellion and resistance and perseverance, and that journey of music, that fascination with music. I mean, I think God used that because, sure enough, I mean, I could weep for music. Music touches me in a unique way. It's a great gift. Um, I can inhabit. I feel like I inhabit those people that I'm singing about, or I'm listening to the song. People in the song, or the people the song is about. I feel like I'm right there with them in their struggles, and it's a connection beyond. I feel more connected to these people of the past in some ways than I can explain, more connected than people I know and love. The music just transcends so much. And sure enough, it didn't take long before I realized, well, sure, what was all this fighting about necessarily? Why did people starve to death? Why didn't they take the soup and become Protestants? What's the crack? Like this is just there's something to this. You don't fight for hundreds of years for a facade, for an illusory sort of a self-help sort of a delusion thing that yeah, has some positive benefits, a sort of a helpful delusion. You don't you don't make yourself martyrs for generation after generation, father to son. I mean, that's something mad. People don't fight for anything like that. Above all, I think they fought for their religion. And these are people I admire, the bravery of them, and I'd wait for them, especially the heroic men in the music and the families and just the everyday people and what they went through. And they did go through it and persevered that we might have a life. So all this stuff is bouncing around in my head. And they don't, with all their wisdom and all I'd learned about them, there was an integrity about them. And you don't fight for something worthless, you fight for something worth fighting for. And they died for it without hesitation. They knew something we didn't know. They knew that above all things, this was worth dying for. This cannot be lost. And they successfully, one of the few countries in Europe that successfully retained their faith in the Reformation and all this, against the penal laws in Ireland and stuff. So that was one thing, traditional music and traditional Irish culture. But then the big consolidating moment was working in the gym, and a woman comes in and she has her father is from Belfast. She grew up here, but she's actually devout Catholic. And she came in and she had the ash on her head, Ash Wednesday, only this year. Really, it hasn't been that long. And I said to her, "Oh, the ash, are you a school teacher?" And I wasn't being funny or anything. I was part of the job is you're building a rapport with these people, you're trying to be a friend and a help to them, and just trying to learn about them. And I said, "Oh, you must be a teacher," because I thought, who else goes to Ash Wednesday? Only people that are, obliged to. And she said, "No, no, I went to mass this morning." And I said, "Oh, mass, gosh, good mass, huh?" I didn't, I didn't give the impression, but I said, "Really, mass?" Like I was genuinely surprised. And she said, "Yeah, yeah, I go to mass." And but we were talking anyway. So this was her first free trial at the gym, and she was exploring it, and I was trying to see, what are your goals? What's your lifestyle and all this. And as I was talking to her, she was just really well spoken, really well thought out, really intelligent, and I was very impressed by her. In fact, she had an integrity, middle-aged woman, a mother. She had an integrity that I hadn't seen. But with all this time I'd spent in solitude, formating my morals, I suppose, for the pursuit of the truth, whatever it might be. And I didn't formate them on my own. I took bits from here and there. But this sort of morality was building, and I was interested in the truth. I'd sort of saw that whatever was in her, it was a witness of Holy Spirit or holiness or virtue, I suppose. What I was seeing in her, like, was that she had these admirable qualities that are seldom seen, maybe more than I'd ever seen them in anyone. There was a great integrity about her, and she's the opposite of mindless. She was not just intelligent, but someone who'd spent a lot of time thinking about what she believed, and that's something you hardly ever see. Most people sort of, at a certain point, they just want to go on with their life and get to the pub and get to work and go play golf. They give up on all that thinking stuff whenever necessary. But she actually thought, no, I want to know what I believe. I want to understand it. Really, I was really, really impressed. We got talking. She told me she went to mass, bonded about her heritage, and she heard the accent, and she was interested. These people often are, and she the music came into the conversation. I was playing music, sort of semi-professionally, and she said that she was in the choir, and she was a singer as well. We got on really well. She's even a carnivore. With all that irritable bowel syndrome stuff, it was carnivore diet, or Jordan Peterson thing I learned from him that actually helped me in a great way. I was this weirdo that ate meat everywhere, and people couldn't believe it. And now I met one just like me, and she understood it, and she had researched. I was impressed, I was impressed, and she was very just very interesting. And she had to run then. She had to go to choir practice, and I thought, oh yeah, that's fairly interesting. You play the piano and this, and you sing. And she said, yeah, you have to come along sometime. And I said, sure, I will. Sure, what's a bit of music? If it's beautiful music, it's beautiful music. Doesn't Church doesn't matter so much. I added her on the messenger 40 days then, Lent. I messaged her away, kind of queries and things I was interested in, curious about. And yeah, she was critical, opened my mind to Catholicism specifically in a big way, um, and educated me a lot with the questions I asked. And didn't take her up on the offer to go to the choir, but all this culminated that in Easter Sunday, all this tradition, I was acknowledging everything was coming together, and I was kind of thinking, we're here in Australia, a pretty secular country, and there's a big Easter tradition. People go camping, they go drinking, they celebrate Easter. We actually celebrate Easter, and we're so far from our Christian roots. Even Australia has Christian roots, and people have no idea what to celebrate. And yet, even at that, and Christmas as well, and even at that, it's such a profound tradition that it's transcended all the indifference and carelessness about religion, that people are still celebrating it, so much so they don't even know what they're celebrating. That's how profound this tradition is. That's how integrated it is into our culture and society, even in a place fairly secular as Australia. And I thought, um, I kind of felt bad. I kind of felt like, I think at this point, I believe that Jesus came and died probably, and it was a great sacrifice, and that I don't know if I thought he was our savior. I must have thought it, but I thought I kind of need to acknowledge this is if there's a day of Christianity, all this thought about Christianity, if there's a day to reverence Christianity, it's the day. This is the day. Like, this is the pivotal event of the whole narrative. And part of me probably didn't believe, and part of me did believe, but I wanted to placate the part of me that did believe. And so I said, I was sleeping in the day. I wasn't being a functional human being that day. I wasn't in a productive part of my life. Um, and I woke up, 5:30 or so. And I thought, oh no, I failed to do my diligence and go to the mass or whatever. If I was going to go to mass, I should have gone today. Then I looked it up, and sure enough, the cathedral, there was a 6 p.m. mass. So I threw on my pants and I raced and drove. Got in there. I messaged the woman, and I said to her, I just felt this sort of guilt. I just want to go in. I'm going to go in. Got there a little bit late, but generally got there. I had no idea about the mass. To me, went to mass throughout school. It was just this penitential waiting ceremony. And she actually came in, and came upstairs and sat with me then for the latter half of the mass. I had no idea what was going on. I had no interest in the mass. It didn't mean anything to me. But I was happy to be there. And I was worried to go there because I was feared of being judged. But I knew that I remember saying to myself, um, God wouldn't want that. God would welcome me into his house. God would not want that I'd be feared to come into his house for fear of being judged. I remember that was very clear in my mind. So I thought, fearful or not, I should go because it's God's house. I knew it was God's house. There were some things I have to be thankful for in Catholic education. There's some things I knew, like Easter, what it was, church, the house of God. But I'm not resentful, but I'm very cognizant that it's dangerous. The way Catholic education is taught today is incredibly dangerous. It's producing atheism at a profound rate, and sometimes I even think you'd be better off without it. The way it's taught now, you might have more of a chance of actually finding God if you weren't. Because the problem with Catholic education is you think you know it all, and what you know is so little. But yeah, I didn't care for the mass. I didn't know anything about the mass. But thankfully she came and she introduced me to the priest. And in the same way I saw integrity in her, I did in the priest as well. And he was a very good man. I sat down, well, I stood there and we talked for an hour and I threw questions at him. In that 40 days of curiosity, I'd been listening to the Gospels as well on audiobook. Probably not a Catholic translation, but I just remember I was listening to it. I was pretty interested. I was pretty well coming into faith, private faith in a Protestant sense, not a Catholic faith, but I believed in an intimate relationship with Christ, probably because of the writing and all that.
Mm.
And yeah, the priest impressed me, and that was that. It was a pleasant evening. But she invited me to come to a rosary. That really sparked my interest because I'd fallen in love with my heritage, and I loved hearing these stories of great aunts and all this, from Dad and stuff. And I'd always soak up these stories and bounce around in my head. I feel like I know more about that family. Like I feel like I have a relationship with them. I know so much about the great aunts, and because my dad served his time with his uncle Tom, and Tom was unbelievably devout, and Mary and all this. And the rosary, was this recurring theme in these stories. They had this great devotion to the rosary. My parents didn't, but I knew that people before them did. And I thought this theme of arrogance blinding me from the truth, and then being humbled, and then embracing tradition, and things in my life get better, and things start to make sense, have been recurring and recurring. And I thought, and these rosaries, what did they say? Alarm bells. I was thinking the rosary. Yeah, geez, what's that rosary all about? They used to pray it so much. Went to the rosary Tuesday night group session, and they actually had shown us the rosary in primary school. We definitely didn't pray it. It was an Ash Wednesday they showed it. So I knew it was Catholic. I was surprised. Looking back now at how poorly they taught the faith, I'm surprised they even showed us a rosary. It was a controversial of them, but they did. And so I kind of knew what it was. I knew it was a structured prayer routine. I didn't know anything about meditation. This woman was actually really nice. She bought me rosary beads and a pamphlet thing to explain it just before I went in. So I started reading that during the session. When I went, so I still had this conception that Catholics were sort of mindless and brainwashed and cultish and stuff. But I went in and I heard this very monotone sort of expression. The Lord is with thee. And I thought, geez, like, what am I after walking into at all? I was kind of unsettled, but I went along with it anyway because, I trusted this woman and kneeled down with her. She kneeled down for the whole thing. So I said, oh, sure, as well. And I was reading through the thing and starting to understand the meditation. I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting about meditating on the mysteries, Still very new, learning a lot. And then, like, partway through the rosary, I had this, I was used to having fits of stomach pain, but on the carnivore diet, I was generally very healthy. But I had this sudden fit of nausea and sweating, and I had to rock back off the kneeler and kind of sit onto my heels and kind of, like almost like you'd be getting a fit of nausea, like you were going to be sick, sweating. Was it the strain from kneeling? I mean, I was working in a gym, I was pretty fit. I don't think it was the strain of the action of kneeling. I think there was something I really do think that it was, I mean, we can't know, but I think it was an expulsion or something wicked was retaliating or reacting. And I thought it was a bit strange. But after I prayed that rosary with the people, I had this profound peace. Felt great after. You know, I love things that give me peace, whether it was exercise or music or whatever, because I'd had periods of great unrest in my life. So when something bring me peace, I really kind of thought, wow, that's something else. And I was still a bit concerned about these people. What sort of people was I in a room with, and what were they like, and what kind of occultist this at all. But when I walked out, they did a sort of a fellowship, and we met and we chat. And in the same fashion that the woman had integrity and was admirable and just a lovely person, just actually a really good person. Every one of them was the same way. They are really good people in a way that you don't see. You don't see it in the world. That was critical. I said it to them as well about the sweating, and they said it's like an explosion. I thought, yeah. It's pretty funny. That parish is pretty modernist. It's had a pretty sad history, but this the will of God. This Rosary group, we're even considered like a kind of an extremist sect. There's extremists with their rosaries. You know what I mean? So thanks be to God that I walked into the extremist sect, because I met the best people there.
Yeah.
And they're not the majority. They're a tiny little subsection of the parish. And just so happened I met that woman in that gym that day, and I went to that rosary and I met these people, and they essentially catechized me where I was ignorant and put me on the right path. And if not for that, I might have took my look at the church. I might have gone to that Sunday mass and turned my nose up at it and never gone back.
Mm.
But Our Lady was working, truly. It was tangible. I didn't probably acknowledge it on the day, but it was enough that I wanted to do it again and again. I met the people, powerful witness, was impressed by the people. They had something that I desired, that I admired, that I looked up to, that was missing, that was absent in the world. And so I kept going back, and every week, and the grace is poured out. I think the graces that Our Lady's poured on me are unbelievable. I don't know how to make sense of it. Why me? Why all my buddies at school have been left to sleep, and she's woken me up. Lord's woken me up. I think there's a lot of people probably praying for me. A lot of Irish people that came before me. But for some reason, that rosary, that was the moment. She just consolidated it, and she just took my hand. It was like we were in the woods, and she just pulled me through the brush at a million miles an hour, progressively more and more. And the more I leaned in, the more she pulled me. And I heard Father Rippiger say that, if, well, actually, a friend at the Rosary group had told me about the Latin Mass. And I think I'd been to a Mass, but then I listened to Father Rippiger. I don't know how I came across him. Oh, I was interested in the exorcist stuff. Funnily enough, I believed in the demonic probably more than I believed in God at a point. And I've seen this in my family as well. My brother and my dad, they're interested in that stuff, even though they're not in. If I put on a Catholic talk, no one cares. But put on the demonic and everyone's ears spike up. Everyone kind of believes in it. And I think, well, if you believe in that, there's probably the inverse as well. That made it real to me as well. Father Ripperger's testimonies about exorcism, that was pretty interesting. That was because he seemed credible. They were interesting. But I was listening to his stuff, and he talked about the rosary. He said, generally, if you pray the rosary every day for a year, you'll either give up the rosary or give up your sins. And I thought, geez, that's a pretty good deal, because I wanted to be chaste. I wanted to be holy. I wanted to at least try. It was something I wanted to do. I wanted to be Catholic at that point. And I started praying it every day. And then again, like another step up, Our Lady sees that, and she says, all right. She pulls you again. And it's not just me, the journey, to say that the journey has been unbelievable. If I'd have thought that my life would be so different now in 8 or 9 months, I wouldn't believe it. If I'd thought I'd learn all this, what I've learned, or that I've given up all these habits, the rosary, immediately all my lust and all my pornography went. When I prayed the rosary, I had this period of chastity. Didn't even try to give it up. I just didn't want it. I didn't care for it. And I saw that stuff when I was 6 years old for the first time. I started watching it when I was 10, habitually, and I just gave it up. Like the power of the rosary was right there. I couldn't deny it. It was right there. Ways that passions were tempered, peace, hunger for prayer, love, the fruits were everywhere. Um, so I really thank the Rosary, but I do want to mention as well the in that journey, like so it's hard because there's nowhere to go, there's nowhere to catechize. We're blessed to have the Blessed Sacrament, the Tabernacle available for to go and pray with our Lord, like in the cathedral in Bunbury. We're blessed to have it there until 5 o'clock each day. So I'd often go in there. But I had a hard time growing up. Me and my brother clashed a lot, and pretty traumatic, you know. And God has healed a lot of that, thanks be to God. But ADHD, I think, as much as some people say it's biological, I think it's also caused by trauma. I think when you're on eggshells growing up, you're looking over your shoulder, that you know your attention is going to be divided. It's never going to be central. So I think it's a natural side effect of stress, especially in development, like chronic stress or feeling vulnerable or endangered. And so I would struggle to read. I would struggle to pray. Um, I didn't want my brother to hear me. He sort of antagonizes me when I'm living at home. I didn't want him to. I didn't want him to know. I was fearful to look into my faith or to practice it. So I used to just go to the chapel compulsively, but people would come in then and I'd be anxious about that. It was all new to me. I was very attached to worldly respect. I was kind of not ashamed, maybe ashamed. I was embarrassed, I suppose. Didn't want people to know because it was such a, because I knew what most of the world was like because I'd been just like them. And I almost felt I had an obligation to mock people that had a faith because how thick are you kind of thing, and like you're almost asking for it. It's such a fairy tale. Didn't want friends to know. So I used to be very self-conscious in the chapel. I used to be very vain and worried about what people might think or who might come in. And I wanted to pray and I wanted to read, but I really couldn't. And home wasn't really an option. Because home was more peace at the chapel than home by miles. And a friend of mine that I met through the extremist rosary cult, Ronaldo, informed me about, he sent me this thing about God's Farm, and God's Farm was this place down south. It was facing sort of financial pressure, it might be closed down. It's still, the situation is active. And I'd heard about this God's Farm in the background of chats, and I thought, whatever, you hear there's always something in urgency, there's always something in need. In school we heard all these charities coming and whatever, like. But something came about it. Someone else sent it to me then. Sister Margaret sent it to me then. Who I'd met at Father Brian's funeral. Father Brian was a beautiful man I met as well. Very powerful witness. In the same manner that woman at the gym was a powerful witness, Father Brian as well. Sadly passed away, God rest him. But yeah, she sent me a thing about the farm. So I thought, oh, sure, it's only down the road. I'll go down and see what's the story with God's Farm. I was blown away. I was really impressed. It's like having trauma, post-traumatic stress, I suppose. I'm not saying I have that, but by definition, I suppose I do. I have sort of lasting anxiety from traumatic things. And very hard to find solitude and intimacy with God. Very hard to even just collect thoughts. I think that's why writing was very therapeutic as well previously. And I stopped writing because I started praying as well. Praying became the superior form of writing because instead of formulating my thoughts and solving them, I was giving them to God. But down there, I'd read through Devotion to Mary because Father Brian Morgan was a Marian priest and he was very influential in the 2 weeks that I know him. And that was a huge stepping stone. And then I had naturally became curious about the Eucharist. And I spent a lot of time with our Lord. And I found I could read in the Blessed Sacrament Chapel. And I couldn't ever really read with ADHD because there's such a peace there. But I used to always be worried about people coming in and stuff. And I used to have this anxiety, like, how am I going to explain myself or if they start talking to me? Just general social anxiety as well. And so I went down to the God's Farm and I met Mary. Friend of a friend put me in touch with Mary, told her that I was coming. I was really excited because I got to get out of the house. Being around my brother is a constant weight on me and suffocates me because I love him to death and I don't hate him at all. But for whatever reason, he kind of, I don't know what it is. It's a brotherly thing, maybe jealousy. I don't know, but goes at me like, it's not a it's sort of a predatory thing. So it's pretty restless, it's pretty unending, pretty relentless. So it really wears me down. So I thought, oh, this is great. I could go down here, whatever it's like, it'll be great. It'll be a bit of a break from all this work. I went down and I met Mary, and Mary's lovely. Great chat with Mary. She was in the same fashion interested in my story. Because at that point it had only been a few months. I don't know. It's not something you really hear of that much. You do, but I think more and more we're hearing of it now. But in this world, it's pretty unbelievable. I mean, I find it unbelievable because I know it is grace that brought me to where I am. And because without it, yeah, how on earth, how on earth there's something to it, something miraculous. Especially with myself because I was so arrogant, so cocky, and I just did a 180 and I just humiliated myself willingly to say I was wrong about everything. And all this stuff that I pridefully asserted to people that it was just wrong because the truth was that valuable and important. Talked to Mary. She's very accommodating. She said, so it's basically God's farm. It's like, I didn't really know what it was. It's like this woman, Betty Baker, she was a Protestant. She had a convert. She had a successful business, and she wanted to kind of give back to God. I think she actually was called to. I think literally God basically said to her, "Do this, build this farm." I think he even said, "Call it God's farm," and he even gave the procedure of how I want you to run it, and she did just that. And she gave her life to God in that sense. I don't know if she had family or what the story was with her, but I'm pretty sure at this point in her life she was sort of a single entrepreneur anyway, so she could do this. She had the money to do it, and she did it. I was very successful. I don't know if she was a Protestant then, but she became a Catholic anyway. She always had the conception that God's farm was to be a place, to be a refuge essentially, to be a place for anyone looking to seek God. She didn't want to be exclusive because she'd been a Protestant herself. She had a lot of good Protestant friends that remained friends when she became Catholic that even supported the farm. I think a lot of them actually support the farm still. And yeah, she poured some money into this. She bought a beautiful place in the bush down in between Dunsborough and Margaret River. Pretty beautiful part of the world. A lot of people want to live down there, so it's a pretty special place. Thankfully, it's a little out of the town, so it's not like, but it's wine region, so it'd be an expensive place. But it's mostly bush, which I think is perfect. It's 200 acres, it's huge, and that's what it was. It was a refuge, a retreat center, and successfully ran retreats for ages. She had, if you go down there, you'll see there's history and there's photos, and Mary will explain it to you and stuff. It's really pretty phenomenal what she did. Any of us would be honored to be able to do something like that for God. Like she did something pretty tremendous there. And then she passed away because just lived a good life and passed away. And the farm obviously was her life at that point. God was her life. And Brother Andrews come there a lot. She was very close to him. There's a lot of memorabilia of him there and the retreats. A lot of people have been formed and changed and healed by going to God's farm. It's a place, even I don't know if people want me to disclose what they've told me, but like it's even a place of miracles, like there's some amazing things happening there. It's definitely not just a structure, it's something spiritually profound. And I mean, if as Betty says, it comes from God,
Yeah.
why should he be surprised? It's clearly something special in my opinion. And as she passed away, she really wanted to ensure that it would be maintained um, by people preceding her that would inherit property, whatever. Sadly, that's ongoing. Um, the nature of the ownership of God's farm and the financial situation, and it's all court cases, and Mary has just been like giving her life in an unbelievable way. I don't want to speak for Mary, but what she's
Yeah.
given up to fight that battle is insane. I don't know anyone who would give so much of themselves to a cause. Such a holy woman. So she filled me in on the story, and I spent the night there. Well, I planned on spending a night there, and I spent a week there. But I wanted to read so desperately, and people had given me books, and I wanted to learn my faith and these things. And it was great. My phone didn't work. I thought that was fantastic because that's been a crutch for me for so long. And social media is so bad. But that was great. So I had no excuse. For whatever reason, when you don't have the phone, you don't miss it. But if it's there, you can't focus on it. For me, anyway, with a book, I could read, I could pray, go to adoration, walk. I was 100%, because I still had this self consciousness, this who's hearing me, what am I saying? Like I speak to God in the most intimate way. Informally, I would just talk to Him. about things I would talk to no one about, you know. That was very healing. And I felt comfortable to do it there because I'd go off, walk off into the bush. It's just Mary and John there. I'd walk off into the bush and I was absolutely in solitude. Really, I had that nowhere. And I was also safe and secure and comfortable. I had a place to go back and lie down in a bed. It's not like driving up into the bush to pray, where you're kind of looking around, is the ranger coming or who's coming? Like, you know, you have security and peace to pray. And it's also lovely to just pray and walk, like say a rosary. I meditate a lot better, and just and the beauty, obviously, the beauty puts you in touch directly with God. He speaks through the beauty. Beauty speaks for him. So that's manifest all around you. The Australian bush is not for everyone because Europe has a different kind of a beauty, but it is really beautiful. And I think this place speaks for itself. I think objectively anyone that would go there would see it for what it is. Near the ocean, you know, um, see the Milky Way, silence, real silence. Like if you grew up in the country, you'd know I never knew real silence. Um, Unbelievable. So yeah, when I'd pray there and I went to the chapel at night and to adoration on my own, knowing that I had this time just to myself, no one was coming in, no one was bothered to come in. They'd have to walk up through the bush in the middle of the night anyway. Mary, it's just Mary. So I literally had this absolute security to know I'm one on one with God, and no one is coming to penetrate this or infiltrate this. This is just us, and it's assured. And that brought me so much peace and so much. I was so comfortable to confide in God sincerely, deeply, about shame, about guilt, about things I wouldn't want people to know. You know, so healing, so necessary, and I would never have had. I could never have done that, but not without that opportunity, as well. No, well, there is a television actually. They have great Catholic films there, but in a sense, there's no distractions. It's not part of what they do there. Most days,
Mm.
most evenings, they go eat dinner and go into the living room. The living room doesn't have a telly. Far down room has a telly, which I think is great. I think Catholic movies are great, but I didn't feel in any sense to be distracted. And I want a lovely fire, and Betty built a really nice house there. And I should also add that like it's a refuge center, so there's lots of beds. It's accommodated for groups of people. It's literally built for the purpose of as a refuge for many people.
Mm-hmm.
That is the objective of the whole place. And so it's a beautiful place to be. Warm, kind of a very homely feeling, and just sit by the fire and read. And I felt blessed to do that, you know. And I would read, and I could go to the chapel and read as well. And I would read, and I would enjoy it, and I would get the best out of it. And I don't really think I could have done it elsewhere. Could have done it in the chapel in the cathedral, but every time someone would come in, I lose my thing, and that's frustrating. And reading was
Yeah.
a great part of it, but above all was the security of knowing that you're alone with God and you can just open up to Him and pour out. And for me, and I don't think I'm alone, coming from a place, I love my family. I'm blessed beyond comprehension, but um, it's a bit of a broken place because of my brother, you know, and I love him as well. And I feel sorry to speak badly of him. It's necessary for the story to be told to understand it. That you know, me and him being in my life has been a great difficulty. Not that I'm innocent or a saint or anything. I've had to get away from him at times for my sake, and that was that was my way to do so. I went there, and I think that my faith journey has, in a sense, as well been dependent on that place. And I can't
Yeah.
imagine the sort of homes that some people are in, and how necessary it is, and sort of brokenness, abusive marriages. There's more of a need for refuges than ever. I mean, people are more immoral than ever. People are more antisocial and almost sociopathic. It seems like we're breeding a culture, a nation of sociopathic people, self-interested. People are being hurt and damaged like never before. I mean, if there's any time we need refuges, it's now.
Yeah.
And for a young man in southwestern Australia in the Bunbury diocese, you have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to go. You have no one really to help you. Only Rosemary and these few extremists, these few good people, Uh, you might never bump into them. You really have nowhere to go. If you want to explore your faith and you want to get to know God really personally, and which I imagine people who are in broken places can't do, I could never, ever have achieved depth of relationship with God at home.
Mm.
Every time a door slams, I twitch. So, so necessary. And it's the only one of its kind. There's actually nothing like it at all. And
Mm.
I wanted to mention it for its relevance to the story, but as well, I wanted to mention it for the sake of a plea because it is actually facing a risk of being lost, essentially. It will be lost if funds aren't raised. There's a
Mm.
specificity to the way they're to be raised now that they're not asking for donations, they're asking for what's pledges. Emma, our mutual
Yeah.
friend Emma, who's been really good to me, Emma's been a blessing to get to know, um, has been really, really good helping Mary with this thing. She's very passionate about it as well. I don't know how Emma found out about it. I think Emma actually found out about it. Oh, she met Mary at a Marian thing, at a Marian priest movement,
Yeah.
and got involved with it sort of coincidentally because she didn't have any experience with the place previously. But once she found out, she was very enthused and passionate. She's worked really hard with Mary, helped Mary, and she had this sort of locution, or I don't know what you call it, but in prayer, she became clear to her pledge. They were praying about what are we going to do? Pledge from God, essentially, the pledge. And she didn't understand it at first, which is always, I think, profound when something comes from God and it takes time to process because it's almost assuredly it didn't come from you if you don't even understand it at the first. And then it made sense. The pledge is an assured promise. So they, for legal reasons, they actually can't ask for donations. It wasn't an option. You can't ask for pledges. The solicitor, lawyer, etc., agreed that yeah, actually you could actually do that. So it's really profound. They're asking for pledges, and what a pledge is essentially is that if they need to reach a goal, 2 million, 3 million, or whatever it is, which is not a lot considering this property, 200 acres in Margaret River. That's pretty impressive that it can be saved for such little money. Um, that you're basically saying, if we get enough pledges, 2 million is met or 3 million is met, then we'll ask for the money. You've promised the money. You've essentially committed to give the money. But if it falls asunder and the legal case runs dry and unfortunately the place is not safe, you're not out of pocket any because the alternate issue is that if they do take donations and it fails, how can they get the money back to people? So this way, your money is only withdrawn in the event of a successful outcome. So yeah, I really, Emma's been reminding me. It's not that I don't want to. I really wanted to talk about it. And it's been a blessing, Robert, that you've had us on to talk about it because your channel is really great, and I think you'll reach people that are actually interested in this sort of thing and see the importance in it. And it was kind of you to have me on. I wanted to make a point of that. I want to help the farmer in any way I can.
Mm.
Um, I'm sorry I haven't been more proactive. To be honest, I'm new to my faith. I'm still young.
Yeah.
I'm still not. I'm still, I'm not as mature as I should be yet. There's a lot going on in life, but I want to do as much as I can, and to be able to talk about it's been an honor.
Yeah.
But I really want to explain the significance of it. If it's gone, uh, it will be a loss for not just the young people of Western Australia, but I'd say we should especially worry for young people because they're the future of the church. They are more atheistic probably than ever before, although I think there's rebound effect sort of happening. I think there's an awakening sort of happening, speculative. But statistically, we're more atheistic and immoral than we've ever been. And we need God more than we've ever needed him. I know from first-hand experience. And you can find God at God's farm. You actually can find God where you otherwise can't. And if it's gone, there's nowhere. There is
Yeah.
nowhere that I know of for people, just over 2 million people in the state, a lot of people in the Southwest. I don't think there's anywhere they can go.
Yeah.
It's not an option for me to drive to Perth, and go to these things necessarily. That's quite an endeavor. God's Farm is a locality of the Southwest, one of a kind.
Yeah.
It's essential, really.
Yeah.
If we,
That's good. Yeah, well, I'll put a link to it. Yeah, Emma has spoken about this project, and it's very very dear to her heart, and she's been
Yeah.
mentioning it a few times. So we can put a link into this, and who knows where it will go. And
Yes. Yeah.
I suppose we keep praying that the situation gets sorted out, and uh, that the project can proceed.
Mm. Yeah, I think Emma sees the value of it as well because Emma had a conversion in a powerful way. Similar to
Yeah,
myself, we sort of
yeah,
just did a 180. Like you couldn't have had, which is pretty impressive. It really impresses me that to observe that as a friend or something must be so interesting to watch because this person has just gone against everything they know. You couldn't do a harder sort of a shift of beliefs or but at the same
yeah,
time people you think it'd be a powerful witness, but people kind of turn a blind eye to it. But
yeah,
it's a crazy thing to think, right? That someone can just
yeah,
and um and so I think because of that, because she's seen, I think a big part of my faith, I have to be thankful for, is that I've seen the dark fruits of what the world has to offer. I've been to the bottom of a dark rabbit hole. I never want to go there again. I know that it's rotten to the core.
yeah,
I think Emma does as well. I think Emma's been closer to hell on earth probably more than I've been. Her story is very powerful. It's Road to the Triumph on YouTube. I really recommend
hmm,
watching it. Very good production. It's not just Emma; it's a few stories conglomerated together that she produced. Um, I think when you come from the darkness of the world into the light, you just want to tell everyone about it. You want to shout about it, and anything that could possibly facilitate that sort of transition conversion is, you know, is a high priority. And God's farm, like you see
yeah,
God's farm, it's like a beacon. It's like a hospital for the sick. It's like, and it's the only one around.
yeah,
Other
yeah,
people might dismiss it, but I think when you've had that contrast and you've seen how dark the world is, you think how many souls could be saved. Like it's just its importance is immediately illustrated, like in a clear way.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, hopefully you'll get to come back to Ireland and maybe do the Derry walk to Knock.
That's the
Yeah,
dream. Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah. I
have,
really do want to.
yeah,
I've been
because
talking
Emma,
to. Go on ahead. Sorry.
Emma's brothers, Aaron, Stephen, they and her father, they've been doing it for years. I think you'd
Yeah,
find it interesting.
yeah, and it's amazing. I was talking to Emma's father Thomas briefly on the phone. I talked to him twice now. A really lovely man, and kind of just felt a connection with him straight away. Maybe it's a holiness. I don't know. Something very spiritual about it all. Playing
Yeah.
the music. I mean, I think about Ireland every day, many times a day, and I have for a long time.
Mm.
I've never thought I should live in Ireland, like that. I mean, I've considered it, but I've never thought that. But I've thought Ireland is calling me, maybe in the way St. Patrick was called. And when I talked to Thomas, it was like a moment that was preordained. It was just like in 2 minutes, we were talking about the deepest matters of the world, and I just opened up to him and I told him, I feel like Ireland is calling me. All this music has brought me to my faith, my ancestors,
Yeah.
everything. All these people praying for me. I feel unworthy of all this great intercession in heaven. I feel like I've been chosen by them, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
And he said, "I tell you what, Oisín," he said, after talking to people for so many years, he said, you don't have conversations like this in 2 minutes. You know what I mean? There's definitely something happening. There's definitely a calling. And I thought, wow. And the um, Derry people as well, they're very real because of what they've been through
Yes.
with the atrocities up there in the Civil War. Like they're very real people, the troubles that is. They don't kind of what you see is what you get. They're very straight down the line. Good to you. I think they kind of, it's like a sanctification, that suffering they went through.
Yeah.
They're good people, like they're
Yeah.
pure. And my impression with them all has always been good. And the music, there's two great Derry songs back home in Derry Town. I love so well these songs because I'm a musician. Those songs have always resonated in my heart. Before I met Emma, before I met anyone, something about Derry. And then sure
Yeah.
enough, Emma has Emma loves Derry as well. She explained to me all the significance of Derry, it's St. Patrick, and it goes back, and
Yeah.
this walk to Knock, and how it was came to be, in almost a visionary sense that it's four corners of the country come together, and Derry is part of the puzzle. And I'm just thinking, this is no coincidence, that I'm
Yeah.
meeting this man, connecting with him straight away, he's inviting me to his house. He's saying, "Come for this walk." I'm thinking, wow,
Yeah.
God is all around us, man,
Yeah. Well,
working.
I mean, as I said, like there's something very interesting about Derry. It's interesting to experience the different communities around Ireland, and Derry has a very charismatic. He's an incredible bishop, Bishop Donald McKeown,
Right.
and he pushes. You know, he's always with the faithful. He's always with. You see him doing pilgrimages. He's on Lough Derg, or he's on Medjugorje, or
Wow.
we organized men's adoration for the last 3 years in Derry, and he came to them and he promoted them. So this is why there's something in the Derry Catholics that is
Mm,
very unique. I can't explain it, and
mm,
I think you know you'd be blessed to go up there to see it. And they're
yeah.
Carmelite. They have a Carmelite monastery there, Thermabacca, which has been seeing a renewal in vocations. They have new novices coming in, so
Mm.
something is happening in Derry. I don't know. I
I think
can't
you're
explain it.
exactly right. And I can't explain it either. And I feel like I knew it before I was told.
Mm,
Maybe not purely, but it wasn't the first inkling of that notion at all. And even as Emma explains to me the history of it, it's had a real significance. And even in the our history with England, Derry, for some reason, was a significance Catholically. I'm sorry, I don't know the history because it would be great to explain it. But and it was attacked sort of intensely because of
mm,
what it represented. Even though it's a sort of an insignificant place in the sense of materially, practically, it's just a town. It's not like I don't know if it would be strategic by any stroke of imagination, but spiritually, there's something that has caused it to be the epicenter of a lot of aggression and a lot of, you know,
yeah.
it's really interesting. It's worth looking into. I'll definitely look into it. And Emma's even said, you have to read St. Patrick's Confessions. I'm not much of a reader, but I'm going to read that because it even talks about it.
Yeah.
But where are
Yeah.
you, Robert? You've been to Derry, obviously, but are
I've
you in
been
the
up.
where are you
I'm in Ballina, which is between Sligo and uh, Castlebar, just below Sligo.
okay,
It's
yeah.
half an hour from Knock, so, but not,
Oh, wow,
yeah. So wouldn't be a
amazing. Yeah.
million, but I'm from the other side of Ireland, so it's been an eye opener to see the different the Catholic communities.
Mm,
You've got renewals all over Ireland. You have them down in Waterford and in
I've heard.
Cork.
Yeah,
Yeah,
couldn't believe it because I always, I mean, meet a lot of young Irish people come over here. They're often very secular, and I thought, oh, my country, like I hear it in the songs, I love it. And then I think it's fallen away. And one day I asked on Facebook in this chat, I said, where are the Catholic places in the world from Ireland? And I don't know what it's like there. And these people are explaining it to me, that, oh, well, actually in Ireland, there's, like you say, a little pockets of
yeah,
spirit in an explosive way showing up, really like a furnace burning there. They're
yeah,
small, you might miss them, but they're there and they're numerous. And it's so
yeah,
interesting. And it feels very spiritual and all this. I have no reason to attach to Ireland, growing up here since I was 5 years old, but I can't, it's calling, spiritually, musically, everything. And it's so interesting yourself then to say like that you see this sort of something about Derry, not even from Derry, and yet you see it as well.
yeah,
And to hear, like you said, in Waterford, which is my home county, there's even like I think Latin Mass every day in Waterford. There's a big community.
yeah.
Fruits are good. It's phenomenal. I don't even think Irish people don't realize what's happening. Like the ones that are outside of it, my parents and stuff. But it's actually something big going on, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, there's a renewal, and I do think the Marian side of our faith, because we were just doing a school of prayer last Friday, and the person that's leading us in this formation in prayer, she said, or he said, for a man, it's very important that you ask Mary to to give you her heart to love Christ,
Right.
to love Christ like his mother loves him, which is the Marian devotion. This
Mhm.
feminine side that we need to connect with, which is the Marian side, and it's fascinating. I mean, when you were giving your testimony, I couldn't help think of Father Donald Calloway. I don't know if you've heard his
I
testimony.
haven't heard it, but I've heard of it secondhand. I've been told to
Re
listen to it.
Yeah, listen to it.
Right, right,
You'll have to listen to it. Yeah, you'll understand when you listen to it.
right,
But
right.
yeah, so and yeah, but we look forward to seeing you here in Ireland, and
I hope
there's
so. Yeah,
2025 is going to be an interesting year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting you say about the Marian devotion. For sure. And only for I had heard about the rosary and its significance. Like Granny, as you say, like
Mm,
Granny had it figured out. Like only that. So like these people, like I'm hearing this secondhand from Dad, who doesn't really warm much to the faith, but it's so significant in their life on a practical sense that it still shows up in the story. The rosary explicitly. It's
mm,
not necessarily a mainstream Catholic devotion anymore. When you go to most parishes, you won't see a rosary.
no.
Devout parishes, you will. And I sort of had these Protestant ideas and Mary, but I knew something about me, knew whether it was the stories or the intercession above, that I need to know more about her. That's why I read the True Devotion.
Mm,
I never read a book so fast in my life. It
gosh.
was it was the key. It was the ingredient. It was missing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
she took it by the hand. But
Did you do
that's
the
very
consecration?
Our Lady of
Yeah.
Mount Carmel this day. I finally did it. It was
Okay.
beautiful. Um, but thanks be to God, I had the Rosary conversion experience because other than
Yeah.
that, I might have never paid any attention to Our Lady. So
Yeah.
important though she is.
Yeah. Well, Oisín, I can tell you, listen to Father Don Calloway's
I will.
testimony. You'll
I
find it
will.
interesting, and then come back to Ireland. There's a lot of work to do here over here in Ireland.
Right.
You never know what will happen back here, but
Yeah.
yeah, you
Time to
find it
start
interesting.
rebuilding, is it?
Yeah, there's lots to be positive. I think during COVID really turned the church
Right.
around in Ireland
Right.
because then when they took away the mass, then we had to go to our underground masses. So there was no, all during COVID, there was 20, 30 priests I knew doing underground, clandestine masses, and
Back to the
you know,
penal times.
it really was, so there is
Yeah.
lots of, and that stood after COVID. People kept, those groups going. When our bishops abandoned us, the clergy didn't. I mean, and that's a statement of reflecting on what happened. My wife is Polish,
Mm.
and in Poland, the bishop said, "You know what we're going to do? We're going to have more masses so you can socially distance." So they took the opposite approach to the Irish bishops. The
Wow. Yeah.
Pol Yeah, so they said like instead of okay, we've three masses and they're full. Look, we'll do six masses and then people can space out more. So they did more
Yeah.
ma.
How about that for a response, huh?
Yeah, they did. They didn't. They never shut. They never stopped saying mass in Poland, and whereas in Ireland, it was be afraid. The message from the church was be
Mm.
afraid, be afraid, be afraid. So don't come to mass, social distance, don't go out. It was crazy, bonkers, absolutely.
It's
We're
bonkers. Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's so disconnected from the necessity of the sacraments, which has always been
exactly, exactly.
always been so paramount. It's like all of a
Yeah.
sudden this stuff doesn't matter. It's
Yeah, yeah. Well,
third.
it was worse I mean, we can pardon them the first year because it started in March and April and people trying to see what it was. But a year later in Easter, they still weren't saying mass. That was the craziness. It made no sense the second year. Yeah, but you know,
Mm. Someone young in the faith like myself, that would be detrimental. I actually heard here, it wasn't as bad in the West Australia, but I heard that some people, it strengthened their faith and some people really suffered. I
yeah,
definitely was. For me, the
yeah,
mass and the community was essential, especially in the formative times.
yeah,
And I heard
absolutely.
from cousins and stuff that the episodes of lockdown over there were just horrendous.
Yeah,
I know families that literally just became depressed. fell off the bandwagon. You know, they were about to go to uni, and all this sort of exciting stuff was going on, and just their whole life, like it almost seems diabolical. And then it attacks the mass. I mean, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a serious challenge. But it's really interesting to hear you say that. In a sense, and I think COVID in general, um, ignited a kind of an awakening. Like, say, you have these underground
Yeah.
community of faithful now that are ignited probably in a way they never might have otherwise been. Even myself, I'd have to say that that played a role as well. I was all pro-vax, pro this and that, and lockdown and whatever. I was a sheep, I suppose. And then just another thing I had to, another bitter pill I had to swallow. And, you know, I had to acknowledge my pride there again and say, geez, I was wrong. But I'm grateful for that because when I was saying earlier in the school years, no, I had no reason to doubt authority. That was a big wake up for me, just in general, you know, that the narrative is controlled. Um, I knew history was written by the victors because of Irish history, but that the narrative today is still being controlled, that what we're told, not just in the news, but even in school, is all should be questioned, you know. I think
Yeah.
COVID facilitated that sort of independent thinking in so many people, which I think is actually, if COVID was something diabolical, I think it sort of backfired because it woke so many people up to truth, to the pursuit
Yeah.
of it. And I think it probably brought a lot of people to faith, and it united the faithful and reignited the faithful that were sort of lapsed or you know, their
Yeah.
flame was observed, like, or fallen away from the forefront of their mind. But back there, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's amazing.
But anyway, Oisín, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's nearly 11 o'clock here and I have to move on. But I'm sure we'll touch base. I'll put a link to God's Farm below so that we can start to raise awareness over
Please do,
your neck
yeah.
of the woods. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise, Robert. It's been a real pleasure, and really appreciate you having us on.
No, it's a pleasure for
Hopefully,
me.
if one person can find use in the story, then that's a great honor. You know, it's a great
Uh,
blessing.
I'm sure it is. Watch Don Calloway's testimony and you
I
might
will.
you'll find it interesting. Okay.
All right.
God
God
bless
bless
you,
you.
Oisín. Take care.
Thanks very much. Take care of
Bye
yourself.
bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.